I wanted you to walk us through like what were the stages and how would you define the stages as you do in this book, your stages of your relationship with Will? Because I feel that that's the part that people get blurry because they're looking at it through their lens.
Yeah.
But you both have been so clear about stages of your relationship internally, which I actually think is the hardest part. And so how would you define the stages of your partnership with Will that help people understand like the conversations that you're having behind the scenes from like being madly in love to, you know?
Yeah. Whew. The stages of getting to the most authentic, and it's difficult. So I just want to honor that for a second. Like, it's almost like talking about relationships and the romanticism around the idea of relating is sometimes as detrimental as talking about politics and God, because it's such a staple in how people look at marriage and relating culturally. Right? And all of the romanticism around it. And Will and I have been what I would consider kind of the relationship goals. This romanticized version.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I love this interview for one reason, not because I love it, but because I like knowing who I'm dealing with and meaning all facets of a person. She does a lot of embedded confession in that last video we watched where she says she can change to fit the situation. That's being chameleon-like, which is okay, but not if it's to get what you want. That there's a certain personality type that has that, or there's several personality types. But her baseline here is dramatically different than the one we just watched and very different from the NBC interview. This is why I always say to you guys, you can't look at baseline of a person at home eating Cheetos on the couch. You got to look at the baseline for where they start and look for deviations in that situation. This is a great opportunity. Mark, I was going to wait till the end. I know you got to have something to say about a wardrobe choice considering the situation and what we're talking about. I mean, if she's not... she's not trying to look like a Hare Krishna, I don't know what she's doing. All the loose clothing and all that, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's a wardrobe decision. Maybe I'm projecting onto her, but it sure looks like it's an intentional wardrobe decision. I'll leave that one alone just because I think it's a hot one. But this guy, Jay Shetty, does a textbook image of what we call internal voice. If you see him looking down to his left as he works through a question, that is exactly what we mean by internal voice or internal conversation or discourse. He's thinking, he's using words and bringing them up as he thinks through the process. And it's a great, great illustration of it. She came here to pontificate, and I think that's part of this whole interchange that they do. And you can see that that's part of their whole game because she's doing this right, that she would do in other places when she's pontificating. Then there's that edit. I know you guys are going to talk about the edit, I'm sure. But how do we go from that topic to another topic entirely in there? What my immediate brain wants to say is, why did that happen and who chose to take out whatever that was? Don't know what it was. Had to be something of significance or they wouldn't have cut it that poorly. I'll just leave it at that and say, Scott, what do you got?
I agree with you about the edits. I had a big thing about that because on some of these, she's got one expression is just blaring out, and you go to the next one, it's completely changed, and you can see where they piece these things together. One time in one of these, her arms are crossed, and the other one, you come back and they're not crossed. It's just, but there may be a reason for that. I don't know. Like you were saying, I don't know what the reason would be or who decided to make that decision, but she may be like me in some cases where she talks and then waits a few seconds and starts jumbling up, and then they just cut that out and then to make it shorter and tighter and a better conversation. I don't see her running over her words like I do, because here we see where her head goes down and she starts gripping her ankle, just above her ankle with both hands, and then starts talking from this quarter-inch depth of newfound knowledge she's got from all these therapy books apparently she's been reading. And these are just platitudes that she's talking, that she's spewing out. That's all it is. It's just things she's heard before. She's just giving you things from these books. I know somebody like that does that, and she does the exact same thing. That's why I was like, oh my gosh, I recognize this. I think there's a bunch of people that might do that. And it's probably because they're excited and they want to tell you about what they've learned, but it always seems to go inward and from this narcissistic perspective. That's the person that I know that does this. That's the way they handle it. So it's kind of unnerving when you start getting deeper with it. And I just did this, but Jada's doing this a lot. That's really odd to be throwing your illustrators out and going, we did this without saying we talked about something. We did this. And she's making this little sock puppet gesture with her hand, which was odd to me. We've seen it before in the last episode we did. She was doing that a couple of times, but here she does it. It seems out of place when she's doing this. Notice the words she uses as well. She uses words, we'll hear these over and over: honor, healing, of course, me, myself, I, those words, transparency, journey, path, trauma response, acceptance, and share. We hear all those things, and there's nothing wrong with those words individually in and of themselves, by themselves. But when they keep coming together in groups and you keep hearing the same thing over and over, that's how we know she's eyeball deep in these therapy books, because that's the way those things present themselves. Once you've ingested all that information, you start puking it up and telling everybody you know it. Like when we read books on behavior and body language, we get in here. I get so excited I can't hardly stand it. I can't slow down and get it out quick enough. But she's been thinking about this long enough where she wants to be the teacher here, or the guru in this situation, and teach you these things as she's going along. If she didn't take the narcissistic approach to it, where it's all I, me, to me, I think it would be accepted a little easier on my part anyway than the way she's handling it. And then I think her illustrators, I think she's being honest about this. I don't see any deception cues in this thing, because her illustrators are right on point, land where they should. She seems to, when she uses her illustrators are up high, they're good, they're solid. She's talking at a great volume. She's got it, and it's even, it's steady. Her cadence seems to be just rolling right along. It seems fine. So I think she's speaking from the heart. And when she does this too. And she touches her chest and her heart. So I think this is an example of the more someone talks, the less they know. And we're seeing that here. The more she talks about this, the more you start realizing she doesn't know a whole lot. The depth of it's very, very shallow, because she's learning about it. I don't think she knows as much as she'd like to, but I think she knows more than is comfortable for us to listen to, if that makes any sense. Mark, what do you got?
So I totally agree with you, Greg. She's shown up in a monastic-like clothing. We could both of us be projecting on that, knowing that the interviewer is an ex-Hare Krishna monk. But, possibly not. The environment is not hers. The environment is his, but she gets to choose her clothing. And it is interesting what she's gone for there, given that circumstance. And also the circumstance of, like you say, Scott, the idea that she's trying to get across now of being spiritually, woken and wanting to tell people about that. Okay, so Jay, who's interviewing her, puts forward and gives her an offer there of a metaphor that she picks up on and goes with, which is people get blurry. Other people's lenses are blurry when they look at her situation. So external people looking at this are blurred and romanticized. They both the interviewer and the subject agree and put forward this idea, whereas internally, Will and Jada are clear and authentic. So their lens is clear, they're authentic. Our lens as an outsider, we're blurred and romanticizing this thing. Well, no, but our lens doesn't have that opportunity. All our lens can deal with is what you project to us. We don't really have a lens to look at it. You're in control very much of the image that's being put forward. And we, the public, got a very different idea than you're now saying is the internal thing. Why? Because your machine and you communicated very clearly to the public what you wanted us to believe. And we believed it, because what else had we got? We hadn't got anything else to go on. She then puts forward this idea that this talking about this relationship is like politics and God and culture. So she's basically gone, you get off this territory. You do not question this. If you question how I'm seeing this, it's political, it's religious, and it's cultural. She gave us the three top things, which certainly in America will get you into an argument with somebody: politics, religion, and culture. I think we just got seen off the territory here. Though I'm still in. I'm English. I'm still in. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm a bit obtuse, and not well brought up. So I'll just dive straight in there. Though she has tried to see all of us off on commenting on any of this in a detailed way, because we'd get ourselves into trouble if we do that. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's funny here how Jay says they both have been so clear about their relationship. He says this in the video about her lying about the relationship. And she says the stages to getting the most authentic and it's difficult. That's a sentence that was used. The stages to getting the most authentic and it's difficult. Whatever that means. Then she says, I want you to count the number of distancing phrases that you hear in this sentence. It's almost like talking about relationships and the romanticism around the idea of relating is sometimes. That's in one sentence. This might be the most avoidant, empty, and distancing sentence that we have ever analyzed here on the show. 300 plus episodes, maybe 200 plus, I don't know. But then she says it's such a staple in how people look at marriage and relating. This sentence has no reference, no meaning, no origin. And the word staple, I think, is used to describe something that she isn't talking about or referring to at all. And I don't think staple means what she thinks it means. Then she says, Will and I have been what I would consider kind of the relationship goals. That's a real sentence. Will and I have been what I would consider kind of the relationship goals. I genuinely don't think she's doing this on purpose, and she isn't aware of these fragments making no sense at all. I think for a lot of people in Hollywood, there's a tendency to speak in this way that sounds like it makes sense, but means literally nothing. It's kind of like the people who spend 10, 15 years in college subconsciously start thinking that sounding boring and emotionless means they're an intellectual because their professors sounded that way. See a lot of that. The only time we see respect and true happiness in all of her interviews is when she talks about Tupac.
One of those tape replays.
I wanted you to walk us through, like, what were the stages and how would you define the stages as you do in this book, your stages of your relationship with Will? Because I feel that that's the part that people get blurry because they're looking at it through their lens.
Yeah.
But you both have been so clear about stages of your relationship internally, which I actually think is the hardest part. And so how would you define the stages of your partnership with Will that help people understand, like, the conversations that you're having behind the scenes, from like being madly in love to,
Yeah. Whew. The stages of getting to the most authentic, and it's difficult. So I just want to honor that for a second. Like, it's almost like talking about relationships and the romanticism around the idea of relating is sometimes as detrimental as talking about politics and God, because it's such a staple in how people look at marriage and relating culturally. Right? And all of the romanticism around it. And Will and I have been what I would consider kind of the relationship goals. This romanticized version.
If you like this video, Get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.